The discussion surrounding 3I/Atlas has not faded simply because the interstellar object has already passed through Earth's immediate neighborhood. On the contrary, it has continued to provoke debate, speculation, and institutional caution, largely due to the questions raised by Harvard astrophysicist Avi Loeb, who has become one of the most prominent and controversial voices arguing that the object may not be entirely natural. In a recent Medium post, Loeb focused less on what Atlas is and more on how different branches of government and science have responded to it, highlighting what he sees as a puzzling contrast between public reassurance and quiet ambiguity behind the scenes. Loeb drew particular attention to the response of the Central Intelligence Agency to a formal inquiry submitted by UFO researcher John Greenewald Jr. rather than explicitly denying the existence of any classified material related to 3I/Atlas. The CIA responded in a way that suggested such records might exist, but could neither be confirmed nor denied. To Loeb, this was not a trivial bureaucratic gesture. If Atlas were simply an ordinary comet, as publicly stated, then there would be little reason for any intelligence agency to treat related documentation as potentially sensitive. The fact that the CIA did not outright dismiss the possibility of classified records immediately raised, in Loeb's view, an important question. Why maintain secrecy over something that is supposedly well understood and harmless? This apparent secrecy stood in sharp contrast to the tone adopted by NASA officials, who stated confidently during a November press conference that Atlas was a natural comet. From NASA's perspective, the object fit within known astrophysical models and did not require extraordinary explanations. Loeb did not claim that NASA scientists were acting in bad faith, but he did question the certainty and uniformity of this public narrative. If the conclusion was truly obvious and universally accepted within both academia and government, he asked, why would another arm of the same government appear reluctant to speak openly about it? For Loeb, this discrepancy suggested not proof of alien technology, but something subtler and perhaps more realistic: institutional risk management. He proposed that Atlas might fall into the category of what is known as a black swan event. Such events are defined by their low probability and extremely high impact, making them difficult to predict, but devastating if misunderstood or ignored. In these situations, even a small chance of catastrophic consequences warrants serious consideration. Loeb emphasized that responsible decision-making requires weighing not only likelihood, but also potential impact, especially when the stakes involve global safety or human civilization itself. To illustrate his point, Loeb drew analogies to historical events that were once considered implausible until they happened. The attacks of September 11th, for example, were not widely anticipated in their specific form, yet their impact reshaped geopolitics overnight. Similarly, the Trojan horse in Greek mythology symbolized an improbable deception that proved catastrophic because it was dismissed as harmless. Loeb's argument was not that Atlas is necessarily dangerous or artificial, but that dismissing even a remote possibility without thorough scrutiny could be a grave mistake in hindsight. At the same time, Loeb acknowledged why governments might choose to keep such deliberations out of the public eye. Openly discussing worst-case scenarios involving interstellar objects of uncertain origin could easily trigger panic, speculation, and misinformation. In his view, authorities may prefer to quietly investigate all possibilities while maintaining a calm and reassuring public stance. This approach avoids what he described as crying wolf, preserving institutional credibility so that warnings are taken seriously if a genuine threat ever does emerge. From this perspective, ambiguity is not evidence of conspiracy, but of caution. Loeb's skepticism toward official reassurance is consistent with his broader views on interstellar visitors. Since its discovery in July, he has repeatedly argued that 3I/Atlas exhibits features that, in his assessment, do not fit neatly within existing models of cometary behavior. He has pointed to what he describes as a growing list of anomalies, claiming that there are at least 15 characteristics that remain unexplained. While many of these points are contested by other scientists, Loeb insists that unresolved questions should motivate further investigation rather than premature closure. This skepticism extended to his reaction to a targeted search conducted by Breakthrough Listen, a scientific initiative dedicated to detecting potential extraterrestrial signals. Using the Green Bank Telescope, the largest single-dish radio telescope in the world, researchers scanned Atlas during its closest approach to Earth, looking for any artificial radio transmissions. The search came up empty, and many scientists viewed this as further confirmation that the object was natural. Loeb, however, argued that such a conclusion was logically flawed. He pointed out that the scan covered only a single day in the object's journey, which spans roughly 8,000 years entering the solar system and another 8,000 years exiting it. Drawing a simple analogy, he compared the reasoning to missing a phone call on one specific day and concluding that no one would ever call at all. From his perspective, the absence of a signal during a brief observational window does not meaningfully constrain all possible scenarios, especially if one is considering advanced technologies that may not rely on constant or easily detectable emissions. Looking ahead, Loeb has expressed particular interest in Atlas's future trajectory, especially its approach to Jupiter in March. He has speculated that if the object were artificial, this phase of its journey could reveal new behavior, such as changes in motion or the deployment of smaller objects near the gas giant. While many scientists regard this idea as highly speculative, Loeb maintains that speculation becomes problematic only when it replaces observation, not when it motivates it. In his view, the correct scientific response to uncertainty is to design observations that can confirm or rule out even unlikely hypotheses. Underlying Loeb's position is a broader philosophical argument about science and humility. He has repeatedly emphasized that humanity's understanding of the universe is still incomplete and that interstellar objects represent a new and relatively unexplored category of phenomena. The discovery of the first known interstellar visitors already challenged long-held assumptions about the isolation of our solar system. Given that context, he argues, it would be unscientific to assume that all such objects must conform neatly to expectations derived from local experience alone. Ultimately, Loeb's comments about the CIA, NASA, and Atlas do not amount to a claim that an alien threat is imminent. Rather, they highlight tension between certainty and uncertainty, transparency and caution. He suggests that institutions may publicly project confidence while privately acknowledging gaps in knowledge, especially when those gaps carry potentially large consequences. Whether or not one agrees with his conclusions, his arguments have succeeded in keeping attention focused on how humanity responds to the unknown. As Atlas continues its journey away from Earth, the immediate opportunity for direct observation is diminishing. Yet the questions raised by its passage remain relevant. How should scientists and governments communicate uncertainty? When does reassurance become complacency? And when does speculation become irresponsibility? For Loeb, the lesson is simple but profound. Unless we look carefully and remain open to surprising possibilities, we may only understand the true nature of rare events long after they have passed. In his words, without careful scrutiny, we may never know whether this particular swan was white or black.